One of the other key things I want to go to now, because I think we've covered the barrier thing a bit, is when they're in that area, whether it's just you've got the kitchen cordoned off and they can't get into it, or you've actually got them in a confinement area, you need to give them something else to do. I mean, don't you think we make their lives boring enough as it is? We've got tons of different things that we can give them, especially if it's something you know they love. I would test these things out first to make sure that they find them enjoyable and just as valuable as the adventure of possibly going into the kitchen. You want to make other areas the most fantastic ever. So one of the skill that we want to teach you, like I mentioned earlier, was go to mat, go to plates, to this place where they settle down and when you're working in the kitchen. But for today, your dog is still driving you mad until the Amazon delivery comes. So I would recommend tethering your dog to a very sturdy piece of furniture. If you want to go gangbusters, you can drill into a stable wall area and do a little eye hook, thank you. You can tether the leash to that. But honestly, a lot of times you can just grab a leash and do it. So if you want to talk more about that, I'll grab a leash and I'll show you.
Sure. A couple of different ways you can do it without having to purchase anything, or say you're renting and you can't necessarily install things and you need to leave no damage. I've had some success just lifting up a leg of this couch, for example, if you will, or lifting up this coffee table leg, depending on the size of your dog. You also can merely put the loop of the leash over the door handle on the opposite side of the door where you'd like the dog, and then shut the door with the leash fed through to the other side.
So I just ran into a real life issue that I think I want to share with you. So this is really heavy marble and I can't lift this up on my own, but let's say this is the only option, like maybe this couch isn't here, which I can lift up and adjust. So what I would do is I'm just going to take his leash, I'm going to take the handle, put the leash through it, and I'm good to go. And it's still tethered there, and now I'm going to reattach it to his harness. So he is now officially tethered. So do you think if I go into the kitchen right now and start making a steak, he's going to get a little annoyed? Probably. So I'm going to go get him something to keep him busy. I've got things prepped and ready in the freezer. So let me show you what I got. I'll be right back, Jasper.
And just, this is probably an obvious thing, but if they weren't already trained not to climb on the coffee table, you wouldn't attach them to the coffee table. You want to work with what your dog knows.
Yeah,
say you
don't
want your puppy on the couch, I wouldn't tether them to the couch then. So just think about that. Are they even able to kind of be in that area without causing much harm? That's why a door can wind up being a good option.
A good option.
Around.
Yeah, and I'm big on using the door handle tether.
There is a company that makes pet tethers, and they're really marketed towards vets and trainers, but they also sell them for individual use in people's homes.
Mm-hmm.
And they make it where you can attach them with an eye hook to the wall, but they also make it where it comes with a stopper and you can just slide it under the bottom of any door and shut it.
I love that. It's like, oh, any situation you got covered. So I just have one of the old femur bones that used to be stuffed. I restuffed it with peanut butter, and I've got a Kong here stuffed with frozen peanut butter, and who knows what else is in the bottom that I chose that day. So I can give him two if it's going to be a while, or I can just give him one. But now he's going to choose and do whatever he wants, but they're there for him. If I've got a big dog and a big project that I'm doing in the kitchen, then I'm going to give him plenty to entertain him. Something safe, something that you can monitor. Don't want them necessarily too far away from you. You certainly want to be able to check on them, keep an eye on them. You know, don't completely just leave your dog solo, nothing to do.
Yeah, another little tidbit. So what you tether them with, depending on what it is, may or may not actually keep them attached.
Because they can chew through it?
Because they can chew through it. The pet tethers I listed, they're like the covered cord that you see like on long tie-outs in people's yards and such. But most of the time what you have with you is your leash. So I would just say watch your dog the first time you do it. Do it when it's not actually an emergency the first time, because my dog does not chew her leash, does not chew a darn thing.
But when he was a puppy, he would have.
But when I was working at a farm one time and I tethered her to a tree and I went across and I thought for sure she'd be just fine. And I came back and she had chewed almost all the way through, because we had never done it in that exciting of a scenario.
Right.
So
Again, motivation.
I didn't expect my adult dog to do that because she never had, but there she was almost all the way through. They make chain leashes if you need to keep one at your house for situations like this. Yeah. Even if your puppy isn't really a chewer, depending on how bored they get or how frustrated, they might become one.
Yep. So those tie-out lines might be really perfect for a dog that tends to chew their leash, or that you are not sure if they're going to chew it or not, and you need a regular tie-out line. And certainly they could start to chew on it. You're going to see that and be able to switch things up. So buy two.
Yeah.
I actually tell people a lot of times when you haven't done this yet, tethering for any reason, because there's a lot of different reasons to tether. To just get a cheapo leash, from a discount store, and have that on hand to use, because then you're not having them destroy your nice leather leash that you might like, or some other prized leash that matches the color kind of thing. So have extra leaches around just for tethering.
Walmart has those little chain ones too. So
yeah, the chain ones, it's just links instead of a material.
You can still get a pretty cheap one.
And that's generally a good thing to use for puppies when you're walking them anyway. A lot of times we'll take an old chain choke collar that we would never use as a collar, but we'll attach it to the end of the bottom of a leash for a puppy that likes to chew on their leash when they're walking, and then they'll be like, oh, that's not interesting. That doesn't feel as good on my gums and my teeth. So no progress here, so I'll stop doing that. So the big frustration for puppies quite often is that you are out of sight. So that's why I recommend preferably tethering or having them cordoned off in an area where you can keep an eye on them. Are you tired already? But you can also know that if you're in sight and doing something, not paying attention to them, that they may start to get frustrated and vocalize. So whimpering, crying, even demanding with a bark that you come over and pay attention to them, or let them off of their tether so they can come and be with you and be part of the fun or the madness. So in that case, that is another good reason to test this out and try this when you're not in a scenario that you need it to work, because you're just going to get extremely exasperated, and the likelihood that you're going to unintentionally reinforce any vocalizing they do, meaning paying attention to their vocalizing and then making it something they do again in the future, is going to be heightened if you haven't tried this in a separate scenario and worked through it. So let me break that down for you. Dogs will bark for lots of reasons, but in this scenario, chances are they're going to either be concerned that you're far away from them because they haven't had this happen before, or that they're tethered and they don't like being tethered to something. Again,
leash frustration.
Leash frustration. Another reason you want to give them something yummy to work on, and know that this is actually a really great thing to hang out on the tether without me, because you get this and normally you don't, and isn't that awesome? But then they also might just start to vocalize towards you to get you to react in a way that has an outcome they want, and that outcome could be, get me off this thing, let me into the kitchen. And then you have the chance of then bringing them over, coming over to them when they do that, and then showing them that, yes, if you do that barking or vocalizing, I will come over and come and get you out of the tether because I'm frustrated, and it worked. Woohoo! Doggy puppy just learned that you can control human behavior with vocalizing. Not what you want, right? So you definitely want to try this out when you don't have any pressure going on, when you just maybe want to walk around in the kitchen for 5 minutes. And then you take them off the tether, the long-lasting item goes away again, and then you hang out. And then 5 minutes later, you do it again, and maybe they were only on the tether for a minute, and then you take it away again, because you want this to be paired with being tethered, that it's amazing. And then next time, maybe 10 minutes if they're doing well, but not pushing it too far so that they then get more and more frustrated.
Another thing to make note of too is that different dogs and puppies might find different things more or less frustrating. So if you try the baby gate and your dog can scale it right away or knocks it over, try a tether. If you find that your dog will not tolerate the tether for not even 30 seconds, then maybe try a gate instead. So don't be afraid to kind of switch it up if your dog kind of takes to one thing better than the other. It's hard to know without trying what your dog will take to.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the great things about modern training is that we have various options that all fit into real life. I'll tell you why. Your dog's not actually learning anything. Your dog's not learning how to self-soothe and have impulse control for making a choice to do something else happily. You're not teaching your dog a skill to go place and lay down in a certain designated area. Your dog's not really learning anything except oh my gosh, when I go towards that counter, I get zapped or I get a shock or whatever it is. And quite often I'm realizing it happens when my owner's nearby. So they're also going to see you as the punisher, which is going to diminish any work you do with them in the future as well.
Depending on your dog, the consequences could be fairly minimal or life-altering for them to have extreme fright or pain. Mm-hmm. So it's hard to know, again, until it happens, how your dog is going to take it. It's not something I would risk. Yeah.
Well, it's too risky.
Not when I could just use management.
Right. You can just use management. Biggest recommendation to start things off on the right page before you get to the training piece is baby gates, barriers, what have you. But you've got an extra leash sitting around right now. You've got a leash sitting around. Try it. You're going to be amazed at how much better your life is going to be and how much more sane when you try to go and do something in the kitchen.
It can translate out to good manners elsewhere too, because I'm sure most people like the thought of taking their dog to a restaurant or out to a dog-friendly brewery, want the dog to just settle down and be fine being tied up with all these distractions around. This is really a good first step towards practicing that behavior.
Hallelujah. I'm a huge fan of teaching your dog how to settle when asked. So all the examples Christine just gave, this translates into that of, oh, I see a leash come out, I'm tethered, you're away or not paying attention to me even, but with me, it's not a big deal. And so many dogs have never learned that skill because we didn't know it was on the list of things that would help them and that we should teach them. Tethering the dog to yourself is a wonderful thing that most people don't realize they can do with their puppies especially, or for management of any older dog that is doing something inappropriate and wandering off. It's great for house training and so many other things. So I definitely recommend trying tethering your dog to you as well. But it also can be frustrating if you're in the kitchen trying to do something and have your dog tethered to you. That is not optimal. I would definitely have your dog outside of the kitchen, not only so they are not trying to jump up right there next to you onto the counter, but they're also practicing being outside of the kitchen when things are being prepared, and that's what they're practicing instead.
I would definitely consider something else in the kitchen, just specifically with clients. I had spoken to someone who was taking their puppy everywhere with them on the tether, like we had suggested. It was working very well, but the kitchen, they were always counter surfing. And I was like, when does it happen? And she was like, well, I'll be doing something. And I was like, and the puppy's just right there in counter access, so why don't you just put him over there? And then all it took was putting him behind the baby gate. And then that was such a huge relief for her because she was so frustrated that it was working in these other scenarios, but it was just getting worse and worse in the kitchen.
Yeah, and if you don't want to do the whole baby gate scenario and you're like, oh, that's a nightmare, I'm not going to do that. Okay, great, no problem. Tether your dog to something sturdy that is not a coffee table, if they serve coffee tables as well, and give them a long-lasting treat. Maybe before you join Jeannie, we have Jasper tethered to the coffee table with his peanut butter stuffed bone and a Kong behind it for when he finishes that one, so he's got backup.
Yeah, you can always use things that you have around too. So say nothing's around, but you have another room, just put the dog in the other room.
Give you something to occupy.
Yeah, if there's a room that they can be in and not do things fairly trustworthily, then give them something to do and shut the door. And that's they're practicing some independence from you. I've done that before, certainly myself.
Absolutely. Yep. So so you have a lot of different options for how you get going on this.